Greetings. I'm Stan Houston, and welcome to the Jesus Entrepreneur Experience. And the title is, you read it right. What can the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and that name is important to remember, and those Covington kids mentioned in the news, defamed in the news, and now the story continues. What can they, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the Covington kids, teach you and I, the Christian entrepreneur, about some things we should know and perhaps something we should do? That's coming up. This is What It Takes Radio right now, and the program, the Jesus Entrepreneur Experience, begins right now. And indeed, welcome to the program. We've been gone for a while. There's some reasons for that. And let me tell you what they are in just a moment. But to remind you, the Jesus Entrepreneur Experience is the podcast that comes from the Christian Entrepreneur Network. You can find out more about us at tcenglobal.org, tcenglobal.org. And we're here to help you make life and business work as a Christian entrepreneur. We believe that there is some of God's special wisdom, insight, strength, and direction that we can take advantage of and share together, which will help us to really make our mark and make it in the global marketplace today. Well, I have been off for a while. Some of you may remember, if you heard me on Sunday night flowing into Monday morning, a very important tribute to a friend of mine, with a friend of mine. Wayne Peterson and I, we talked about Paul Ramsey, truly one of the real entrepreneurs in the Christian broadcast ministry. And Paul has passed on to glory. Mike has gone silent, but his spirit carries on. And we celebrated his life, and with a little bit of a tear, remembered how much we will miss him as a mentor and as a friend, and certainly as an example of a little bit about what Jesus, the entrepreneur, would be like. But nothing happened in between until this Friday evening. Now, a couple of reasons. First of all, as you know, I try to say, unless I've got something worth saying, we probably should keep quiet. That's one of the advantages of on-demand radio. We don't have to say something whether we have something to say or not. And I've been in that situation. You got to put the program on, Stan. I don't really have anything worth saying, but you got to say something. Well, we don't have to do that anymore on podcast, on-demand internet radio. And what happened, of course, on Monday was Dr. Martin Luther King Day. Pardon me. That's what most people say, but remember, it was Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And there are many stories there, but first of all, Dr. Martin Luther King was reverend. He was a pastor, truly a pastor entrepreneur, and that's going to be the subject today. And then, as the week progressed, the uproar over the Covington kids. And all I need to do in America and perhaps around the world is say that, and most of you know exactly what I'm talking about, where a group of kids from a Catholic school in Covington, Kentucky, they were at a demonstration, and all of a sudden they became the subject of the demonstration, and they were accused of all kinds of terrible things. And of course, it was discovered that most of the stuff they were accused of, in fact, probably all of the stuff they were accused of, was not nearly significant, and almost all of it was not true. They were lied about, and they were defamed, and they were smeared. and it continues to this day. Well, what can we learn from that as Christian entrepreneurs? Well, those things happened, but I didn't talk about them right away. First of all, Monday, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, everybody else is talking about him and saying basically the same things. So, why should I add to the noise? Then, of course, the problem was that with the incident with the Covington kids, everybody who wanted to make their point jumped in, and the point they made was usually wrong. Here's one of the things that as a coach and as a business performance coach and as a radio teacher, broadcaster, instructor, and mentor, I oftentimes said this: don't talk too soon. That's right. Don't talk too soon. Well, first of all, everybody's talking about Martin Luther King on his day. I really have very little to add. And most of what was being said had already been said before, and it was simply said again. Then from don't talk too soon, I says, it's better to be later and then be right and then be different. Now, can I say that again? That's a part of my helpfulness as an entrepreneur. Don't talk too soon. It's better to be a bit later, to be right, and to be different. And of course, in all of those incidences, we see where that fundamental rule of life and business and communication was violated. But then, waiting for a few days, guess what happened? A man named Steve Strauss wrote a column in USA Today, and I loved it because, first of all, it was different. My friend Tony found it and sent it to me, and here's what it said. MLK's Life, Words, a Great Guide for Entrepreneurs. And here's what Steve says. Entrepreneurs get their inspiration from many different places and lots of different people. For names, inspiration comes from witnessing a business colleague create a small business out of thin air. For others, it comes from seeing great entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs build great big businesses. We think of Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos. But for me, he says, sure, these sources above inspire me just as they do others, but for real inspiration, I find myself gravitating to leaders in other fields. People like Buckminster Fuller, Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King. No, they're not technically entrepreneurs, not by a long shot. But what I find so admirable is that in each of these men, they identified a problem. Okay, they identified a problem, came up with a unique, creative solution, took a chance, defied convention, and made a difference. And then Steve goes on to point out some of the things that really made the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and again named after his father, carried on his legacy, that made them into entrepreneurs. First of all, they took a risk, an incredible risk. Now, we as Christian entrepreneurs say that principle number 4 of the 7 principles, the prayer and the principles of the Christian entrepreneur, right in the middle is the big R word, risk. Risk is fundamental. It is doing something where the odds are you will fail. The odds are usually against you, but they do it anyhow. And Dr. King took a huge risk. He was basically a young man. We forget that even when he died, he was not yet 40. That terrible, terrible murder of Dr. Martin Luther King. The man had achieved so much, and he hadn't even reached his 40th year. Now, what he did is taking something he had learned, something he had studied, the idea of nonviolence, of confrontation without conflict. If it can be avoided, at least you don't provoke it. And then, of course, created the entire movement which led to the Civil Rights Revolution. And, of course, from the Civil Rights Revolution to the changing, the profound changing, not only of the United States of America and our culture and our way of doing things, but obviously as an example to many people in the world. And Steve goes on to point out that look at his life, look at how he learned how to speak. As he points out, he does the same thing I do. Go back and listen to that "I've Got a Dream" speech. I tell entrepreneurs, make sure you listen to that speech and see what he does and how he does it. Storytelling, aspiration, inspiration, perspiration, and then that wonderful, hopeful challenge. If you're an entrepreneur, you need to study the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And then he winds it up by saying, the man had faith. That's vital. There was no guarantee that what he was about was going to end well, and in some ways, obviously, it didn't end well. But it's obvious that he expected that might happen. In fact, the night before he was assassinated, he talked about the dangers that were before him and the life risks that he was taking, but it was based on faith. And I've come to the conviction that we have to talk a lot more about faith, particularly as Jesus entrepreneurs, but for every company or organization. I wrote to a guy today who's doing a lot of work with frontline people in a business, and I said this, you know what? It'll only work if the organization has the ability to teach and inculcate and to lead by spiritual force. Good, spiritual, with a capital S. Not just spirit out there like in, team sport or team spirit. Spiritual force. It is necessary to have God-given strength in order to achieve great things, even small things that become great. In fact, one of the things we as entrepreneurs need to learn from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is, Reverend, it is about spirit force, and it is about faith. Hopefully that's something different that we can learn about the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the entrepreneurial and the spiritual contribution he made to his world, the world, and of course to our own experience and world. I'm Stan Houston. You are in tune with the Jesus Entrepreneur Experience. We've got a few more things to say, so we'll be right back. Once again, I look forward to you joining us. This program will go and grow because people like you become a part of it. I'd love to hear from you. Please audition as I'm auditioning. I would like very much to come and help you and your business, your entrepreneurial business, your Christian entrepreneurial starship enterprise. We can help you. Long experience as a business performance coach, as a marketer, as a broadcaster. We can come into your shop, your place, your way of doing life. And as we say, we're here to help you become strong and to make life and work better, because you are a follower in the footsteps and in the spiritual, emotional, and physical and profound wisdom of Jesus, the entrepreneur. We'd like the opportunity to do that. Reach out, radioedge77@gmail.com, radioedge77@gmail.com. Just a few words. The tragedy, and it is, of the Covington kids. And I'm not going to go into great detail. We just have a few minutes left. Most of you, almost all of you, know what happened and how unfair it was and how bad it was and how, again, people were quick to talk too soon, way too soon. And, of course, not only did they make fools of themselves, they made a great deal of hurt and foolishness for other people. What can we learn about that? What can we as Christian entrepreneurs learn about that? Well, first of all, I'm going to be just very blunt and frank. Because you are being profoundly proud of being a Christian entrepreneur in today's world, the forces of darkness will be after you. The last thing that the enemy of our souls and enterprises want is for those of us who take the Jesus challenge seriously is to have some influence and impact in our world. So he, the enemy of our spirits, souls, and business, will be after us. And he'll find ways of hurting us, attacking us, and making life difficult for us. Be aware. Jesus said he'll do that. He'll go around trying to make trouble. Most of the people in the world he has no problem with. They don't cause him any trouble, so he leaves them alone. But you are in for trouble if you take your Christian entrepreneur work seriously. So you will be attacked. Those young men were attacked. And we forget they weren't just young men. They were really boys. They weren't adult yet. And yet, surprisingly, they kind of handled themselves pretty well, better than most of the adults. And when that young man spoke up and was interviewed, he seemed to handle himself very, very well. Obviously, he'd been well coached by parents and friends. But no, it was more than that. There was something planted inside of him. Some inner authority that he had gotten from home, school, or church that helped him to stand up even to the jackals and wolves of the media. Good for him. And that's the lesson, entrepreneur. I've said to you many times, you're going to have to learn how to handle the media. If you want to survive today, you need help. The media is out there to do you in, and you better know two things: how to handle yourself and how to speak well when it comes after you, because it will. And secondly, you need to know how to turn it around and use it in a positive, powerful way. And part of what we're going to be doing in helping you become a podcaster is to learn as a Christian entrepreneur, every business you are in is a communication business, and we want you to learn how to be just really good, God-graced and good in how you can speak, how you can teach, how you can work, how you can be in front of the mass media, which is the mess media of the world, and use your power, your influence, your words, your wisdom, your strength, your spirit force to use that media to make a positive difference for you, your family, your business, the common good, and for the glory of God. When you speak, Jesus smiles. That's what we want for you. I'm Stan Houston. This is the Jesus Entrepreneur Experience. there you go. And I hope we were later, right, and different, and perhaps helpful for you. Once again, tcenglobal.org/contribute now. tcenglobal.org/contribute now. We would be grateful for your help. We can use it. We need it. And if you want to be a part of the program, or if you have any questions, or if there's any way we can help you, not only as a broadcaster, but as a coach, as someone who loves Jesus along with you and wants to help you and your business and enterprise to go and grow, reach out to us at radioedge77@gmail.com. radioedge77@gmail.com. That's the energy. That's enough word for today. I trust that you'll have a good weekend, a little bit of work, however, some rest, reflection, relaxation, and worship, and ready to meet the marketplace on Monday as a grace-filled, God-following, Jesus entrepreneur. Until that time, when we talk again, I'm Stan Houston. All the best and blessings, and bye for now.